everybody. I'm Lindsay Hernandez. I'm coordinator for Impact Austin, and we're really excited that you joined us today for our final speaker series presentation of 2023. So if you haven't been on one of these calls previously, the Impact Austin Speaker Series is really a virtual community learning resource that we can use as we really start to think about strategic planning on future growth initiatives, housing, economic development, immigrant support, food access and equality, parks and open spaces, which we're talking about today, and a whole host of other topics in our community. So the point of these speaker series is really to bring in dynamic national practitioners together with local leaders in our community, with the goal to offer inspiration and share practical models, working projects, and ideas from across the country and within our city that really help inform innovative solutions to some of the challenges and opportunities that we face within Austin, Minnesota. So today, our presentation is Designing Public Places that Welcome and Engage an Entire Community. And we're excited to have Scott Jordan with us, principal at CIVITAS, a landscape design and urban planning firm in the US. And we also have Dave Merrill with us, the director of Parks, Rec, and Forestry for Austin. So just a few housekeeping things before we get started. If you have any questions or comments during the presentation, please feel free to throw them in the chat, and we will try to either answer them on this call today, or we will be creating a Q&A document after that we can share out too. And the session is being recorded, so it will be available after this presentation to share out within the community. So excited to have you here today. And with that, I will hand it over to Dave to kick us off.
Great. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. As you can see, I am chest deep in whitewater here. I'm going to switch over and share my screen to walk you through a quick little presentation to help explain a little bit what we got going on here. So just to remind you, yes, I am Dave Merrill, Director of Parks, Recreation, and Forestry with the City of Austin. And when I came into this position, there was some talk already in our community of turning the Cedar River in our downtown area into whitewater course. And it kind of came out of the brain of one of our residents in the community, came through COVID. And several people started working around with this project, and I was fortunate to jump in, and I got excited about it right out of the gate. It's just such an exciting thing. And so since then, I've been able to get a little bit more involved, and we're starting to see this thing start to move toward reality a little bit. The details of the project in terms of the impact on ecology and water quality and recreation, there's so much, it's so fun and it's so interesting to talk about, and I get to talk about it a lot. I'm not really going to go into the details of the project a lot in this presentation. This is more about how this project fits into the bigger picture of our community, because as we go down the path of talking about this project, it fits like the crowning piece that fits into the puzzle of all the things that we're trying to do in Austin. Internally for me, with our Parks and Trails master plan, fitting into a future city comprehensive plan, and partnering with other people, other agencies in our community. So the pieces of this, from the perspective of this conversation, it starts with the Whitewater Project. And this project isn't what got this conversation started. Many of you in this conversation had already been having this conversation about what to do in Austin to move things forward, to make some improvements. But I really feel as we've gotten momentum going on this Whitewater Project, it's not the catalyst that got the conversation started, but it might be the engine that really helps drive a lot of this, because this presents a lot of really cool opportunities for the city. The timing of this couldn't be better. As the city embarked on a Parks and Trails master plan, that process had started before I arrived in the position, and I was fortunate to be able to kind of jump in on the early stages of that. And we are still in the process of working through that plan. But I've learned that our community is very engaged in this process. They have opinions, they want to share them, they've been willing to share them at a high level. And the more we talk about it, the more I feel our community is becoming empowered by their ability to have these conversations with us. Um, it's a chance for me to help them understand that, improvements to their trail system or better, bigger parks isn't just about parks and recreation. It's about how all this fits into our community as a whole. And down the line, as we start to have these higher level conversations, like all of this fits into the bigger things that the city of Austin is trying to do to improve the comprehensive efforts of our community. And these pieces are, again, going to fit into this bigger puzzle of the city's comprehensive plan. I was going to list all of the civic organizations and user groups that have already participated in this process or that have a vested, valuable interest, but the list is honestly just too long. I haven't come across any organizations in our community that have no interest in this or don't see the value. Like, everyone sees how they can play a part in this and how this plays a part in what they do. And that's a really powerful feeling. And then certainly we're working with our other local government agencies, not just the city, the county, the state resources, federal resources. We're bringing a lot of people together on this project to see this whole thing through. And ultimately, they'll be involved in the bigger comprehensive plan that the city puts together. I'm going to share another screen here with you. I'm going to let you see the video of our project first, and to give you a little bit of context of where this has started and where it's going, and then take you to some maps to give you a little perspective on what this means from a topographical standpoint in our city.
So Dave, what area of town is this, just so we can have some reference? Right here?
This is just east of our downtown. So
Okay.
a couple blocks east of what our downtown area is.
Okay. And where is this footage from that you're kind of creating these models?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Where is this footage from that you grab
The
these?
footage we're seeing is a mashup of two local water parks, one in Manchester, Iowa, and one in Charles City. They've given us permission and they've become allies and friends of ours on this project, and they've been helping us along the way by letting us use their images, their expertise, their experience.
So because of that, you can really show the comps of how a project like this has impacted other communities, correct? Oh, is he still there?
Sorry, let's see. Trying to get this guy off my screen.
Yeah, we have a map up right now.
Okay, well, I'm not, that's good. I'm not seeing that, so
Uh-huh.
trust you on that. So the map that you're looking at is that comes from our master parks and trails team from MSA that's helping us work through that. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit I'm looking at some guy trying to sell me something here.
Trying to update your car warranty.
Yes, my apologies. Oh, are we back to my slideshow?
Yes.
Okay, so the map that we're looking at here is a product of our Parks and Trails master plan, the proposal. The red map that we see here is the river district that we've kind of identified, and these are all parks that are currently connected to the river in downtown Austin. If you'll see here on the screen in the center, there's a gap, and that gap is conveniently the place where our whitewater course would be. The idea is that we would connect facilities and amenities in our Mill Pond area, Horace Austin Park, to some of these southern central parks through greenways that we would connect through with our whitewater project. And I have another map of that. Okay. Sorry. Well, I had an overlay of what that map looked like with what our proposed whitewater course looks like. Sorry. Are you seeing what I'm seeing?
We're seeing an empty slide. So Dave, if we're having a hard time with that map, will this map be uploaded in the near future around either the city website or the parks website so we can send people to that so they can take a look?
Yes, once we get a little bit, we'll have a little bit more detail. We have a meeting with our consultant, REP, the company that's doing our feasibility study. We have a meeting with them coming up next week. So that'll provide a little bit more detailed stuff that we'll be able to start to present to the public. We're going to be on their pace in terms of what they really think we should be releasing at certain times. They're the experts in that area, so we want to make sure that we're giving out accurate information as we go.
Okay.
But sorry, I got a little off track there. But to get back on pace here, what I'm asking the public to do through this process is first visualize yourself in the experience, what you know, what you've experienced in a whitewater course. Of envision yourself there. We've started doing some consumer outreach, talking to people, finding out based on their demographics what kind of interests they have in these spaces. And then we want them to visualize and understand what their wants and needs are from this experience. We want them to imagine what it's going to be like the first time they visit this. What are their impressions? What are they taking in? Because currently, as we propose the project, these again are the details, the nuts and bolts. We're looking at it from the river out. Like, how is this going to be constructed? How is it going to impact flooding? Those sorts of things. But the big deal on this is really, how's it going to be from the outside looking in? How are our community members going to view this project? What are they going to experience? And for them to start to visualize that will be powerful. And every step we take along the way, providing them with more tangible views of what this could look like, from maps to models, will really start to help shape what their thoughts and opinions of this can be. And then we'd like them to look at it not from their first perspective, but after they've been comfortable there, how do they envision themselves using this space? Because we want to impact people that are coming to our community new for the first time, but we also are going to be serving, very importantly, our community, people that are going to see this thing on a daily basis. They're going to come there multiple times per year with their families to do things. And then part of this process is then for them to kind of quantify the impact of this experience. What kind of time are they going to commit to improving our parks and trails, and this project in particular? Are they just going to look at it as they drive over a bridge? Are they going to spend time with their family? Is this going to be something that they are going to enjoy? Once we start checking the boxes of, I want to spend my time there and I want to enjoy it, I plan to enjoy it, we really start getting the buy-in on the value of this. It's going to give people to interact a little bit more with nature. We'll clean up the area. We'll make it more appealing, which currently it's less than appealing. You can't really see the river. It's going to give people an opportunity to immerse themselves in our community. This will be a gathering place for everyone, from people out of town, people that are in town, that are there bringing their family and their kids. And then ultimately for people to understand what their consumer footprint is going to be. Are they having ice cream while they're down there? Are they going to a brew pub? Are they staying in our hotels? Are they just walking, to their office downtown? But we want people to really understand what this can and will mean to them. And then we want to multiply all of this impact by the number of people that are going to visit it, and really start to gather some information on, what's this going to do for us in the long term. We really see how this project is going to fit with other recreational improvements in the area, in this park, as it relates to our master trails plan. It's going to slide right in, and it's really going to enhance how we move forward with all of this. So I can answer any questions that people have about the specifics of the project, but this is a kind of a philosophical overview of how this is supposed to fit into our bigger plans in the community.
And Dave, I think that's a great segue on over to Scott, because we keep hearing this conversation of saying that this is really open to the entire community, to visitors and people that live there. It's open space that engages a wide variety of folks. And that's really sort of the essence of what Scott's going to be talking about right now, about designing public spaces that welcome and engage an entire community. So Scott, thank you. And Dave, thank you very much for sharing that. We can move back to some of those questions, I think, at the end of the presentation. But Scott, why don't you jump on really quick and start going through what you're going to be talking about?
Absolutely. Well, thanks, Daniel, and thanks, Dave. I'm excited to be here. Tell you a little bit about CIVITAS, just to give you a little bit of background. We're a landscape architecture urban design firm out of Denver, Colorado, but have been working nationally really for the last 25 years. I've been here for 22 of those. We're really based around the idea. CIVITAS is Latin for the idea of being a place where people meet, exchange, settle, and build a community around shared resources. And they call it a home. And we're named CIVITAS because we really do focus on making cities better, whether that's through open space, public realm design, community planning, all of that stuff. As a firm of 28, we're really passionate designers that really love the diversity and uniqueness of cities. And we really try to find a way through our work to create impactful change that enable healthy, sustainable, and just communities to be developed. We really believe in the power of multiple intelligences, which means we believe anybody can have the best idea. We want to find the best idea and don't care where it comes from. And we really rely on collaboration, right? We look at ourselves as a partner with our clients, with the consultants, and especially with the communities within which we work. And so you'll see that in a couple of the projects I'm going to show. And we really believe that it's about extroverting people's experiences out into the public realm where they can have social interactions with people of all different socioeconomic backgrounds, build commonality, and realize and create a stronger sense of community. So how does this impact you all and this idea as a whole? You know, we've been working across the country, and I've been actually working in a lot of communities that are less than 100,000 people. And when you look worldwide, there's about 2.1 billion people that live in communities of less than 100,000 people. When you scale into the US, there's about 313 cities that have populations greater than 100,000, but 2,800 are cities that have populations less than 100,000. So a lot of people are living in smaller communities, of which 83% of all people in the US live in urban areas. And so we see that as a lot of opportunity and a lot of people that are impacted in smaller communities and deserve equal opportunity to have these great experiences and public spaces. So, you know, what does this kind of global society that we have mean for parks and open spaces? Well, I think to begin with, I think because we're so connected, there's a broader context for people to think big. You know, I'm guessing 10 years ago, people wouldn't even have been contemplating a whitewater course in downtown Austin. But now people are seeing these things all around the world. Most of you probably know most of these examples that you're seeing on the screen. I think communities are now expecting more, especially a place like Austin that has a major headquarters or a couple headquarters nearby. You're bringing people from all over, so they have a bigger understanding of what's possible, right? Parks are no longer just trees and lawn and a playground. There's a lot more complex understanding that a park can be a place to provide food. It can be a place for gathering. It can be a place for recreation. It can be a place for health. There's heightened expectations for what traditional park amenities are, right? The spinorama playgrounds we used to have now are no longer legal, but we're creating these amazing interactive play spaces that allow kids to adventure and think out their own way. And we're seeing a bigger increased value on natural systems in creating places that are both for people and nature. And then ultimately, we're seeing that parks and open spaces are about an inclusive approach to placemaking, really giving everybody in the community a place where they can feel comfortable, welcome, and a place they can go hang out. And so I'm going to share with you 3 projects that are 3 very different scales. The first one is in Wayzata, just north of you all. This is a project we've been working on since 2015. The fundamental issue they've had is when the railroad came through, they built the railroad right next to the lake. And Main Street, downtown Wayzata, is just to the left of this image. That's what it was in 1930. This is how it exists today. This has been a community that's been mostly cut off from their lakefront. This is their lakefront, what it looked like when we started the project. Their 100% corner was a parking lot. And the question was, how can we give Wayzata their lake back, spur on some reinvestment, make the retail across Lake Street better, and overall just reconnect them back to their waterfront. This was a process that we built upon a larger community planning effort that was done ahead of us called the Wayzata Lake Effect. This was a full community plan, and we were really just looking at the central waterfront area here. And I think that's where we take what Dave and the Parks and Trails Master Plan is doing now. What we do is create a vision for some of those spaces within it to catalyze excitement and opportunity for the community. And so on this process, we've been through, this is 2015 we began. Phase 1 was completed in 2020, and we're just about to begin phase 2 construction on July 1st. But we've had 5 community meetings, 9 steering committee meetings, 8 council work sessions, and 11 council presentations over that time. And this is really about trying to gather community support and input. And one of the things that we've learned in this community is when we held these traditional open houses, you can see Wayzata is quite white, quite affluent, and an older population base. And when we had traditional community meetings, that's who was coming out. And we realized that we weren't hearing from the community members that had families and small children. And so we shifted partway through and started doing what we called ice cream socials. This was for phase 2 down on the built waterfront that we completed in 2020. But as you can see, we still get the elder white family members coming out, but we had teenagers, we had kids. We really brought a diversity of users to come out and talk about what they wanted on their lakefront. And so ultimately, we created a series of guiding principles or core values about making it about the lake, making it environmentally sensitive for local residents, and ultimately making it safe, because you do have a railroad you got to cross to get to the lakefront. So in it, we developed a kind of two-phase plan. Phase 1 would be everything north of the tracks in downtown. Phase 2 and 3 would be south of the tracks, really the lakefront improvements. There are 2 different phases with potential subphases. We have 7 different sources of funding. Phase 1 was 9 million. Phase 2 is about 10 million. And I'll go into those phases a little bit further. So the first phase was really looking at Lake Street and that municipal parking lot that they had right on their 100% corner. You know, if we asked the community members, if you're designing a city, would you put a parking lot on your lakefront open space? Probably not. And so this entire project was about reallocating Lake Street and creating a better pedestrian environment to spur on reinvestment in the retail, to create a place for the community to come together and enjoy the lakefront. And then ultimately really balance the right level of pedestrian versus vehicular traffic. And so we asked the community the question, what makes great main streets, right? It's a balance between pedestrians and cars. It has vibrant retail that spills onto the street. There's amenities that entice users to linger. As a main street, you want people to hang out and exist there. And ultimately, a main street can become a place upon itself. This is a street we did here in Denver that has since converted through the pandemic to a closed off street. So this is what it looks like most days now, which is quite wonderful. So as we looked at Lake Street, this is Lake Street in downtown Wayzata. This is what it existed as today. It was, or previously, it was 2 parking lanes, 2 drive lanes, a center turn lane that's never used, about 10 feet of sidewalk on this side, and about 5 feet of sidewalk on the lake side on the south. This is what we're proposing to do. We're looking at putting the road on a diet, narrowing it down to single drive lanes in each direction, getting rid of the center turn lane, adding about 20 feet of outdoor space along the retail so that these retail restaurants can spill out into it. And then along the south side, actually looking at shifting it over, adding more sidewalk, but then creating an interconnected regional bikeway right into downtown. And this bikeway connects out to the Dakota Rail Trail system, which connects about 62 miles around Minnesota right into downtown Wayzata. So really talking about bringing people down and realizing that economics of commerce of what they could attain, that's what this is doing. So the phase 1 really diversified how they funded themselves. They received a railroad grant to enhance the crossings. They worked with the Three Rivers Greenway District, that's the regional greenway network, to get $1 million grant from them. They had a $2 million deferred maintenance fund from Metropolitan Sewer District for some work that they knew they were going to do this when the Metropolitan Sewer District came in and redid their main line. So they had them hold that money back to use it. And then they had some of their own capital improvement funds for $9 million. And so this is what the project looked like when we started. This is what it looks like today. So this was completed in 2020. We took advantage of COVID shutting the restaurants down, and we're able to allow them to maintain delivery and pickup, but we're able to take advantage of that to build the street entirely while there was no people downtown to begin with. But the nice thing was that it did open right at the end of 2020, and people started using this and getting food at the restaurants and going across and still eating in a safe environment where they could spread out. You can see here the regional bikeway that's coming into downtown with a secondary sidewalk and a little water feature that has become kind of a feature for kids and bringing kids back and enlivening the waterfront during the day. It's become the community gathering space. And ultimately, it's reconnected them back to their lake. Even though the railroad tracks are still there, they're just behind the fence. You feel like you're a part of the lake experience. And so then moving into phase 2, this was where we were actually reconnecting the lake, building a boardwalk that's about 1,500 linear feet long, so they can actually walk along the water's edge on the waterfront and build the docks. And so this is about a $10 million investment. Again, they diversified their funding. They got $500,000 from the watershed district for some stormwater and lake bed restoration work. They received bond money from the state, and they also had some TIF money available from some of the redevelopment projects that they were able to shift that funding mechanism to use on public open space. And then they formed a conservancy that's responsible for raising about 1.5 million of those funds. And the way they're doing that is through some naming rights. And an interesting story about that is The property owner that owns the building on the north side of Lake Street fought against the project during early design and has since realized the benefit it's created for downtown. And they're actually the leading donor and donated about $500,000 towards the Conservancy funding to build the boardwalk because they just see the value of what it is. So we kind of took a concerned neighbor and turned them into a project supporter. So the lake walk itself is an extensive 10-foot wide boardwalk with some step downs where you can get down, touch the water, and then some community docks. And so this is beginning in July 1st will be when they start driving piles, and we will be open by the end of the year. And so for the first time in 80 years, they'll actually be able to walk along the water's edge in downtown Wayzata. The next project I'm going to talk about is a little bigger scale. This is in Denver, Colorado here on the South Platte River. And if you don't know Denver, the South Platte was really at the confluence of the South Platte and Cherry Creek is where Denver was formed right here. But even in the 50s and 60s, it became an industrial area. Like every city in North America, we kind of turned our backs to the river. This is what it looked like in early 2000s, where it was literally wasted industrial area with a very constrained river flowing through the site. This is what the site looked like previously, what it looks like today. And what I'm really going to talk about is how can a park become a part of a bigger open space system to really catalyze reinvestment, to create new communities, and to create kind of a shared, attainable, and market rate community where previously nothing existed. And so some of the key moves and the way this folds into a larger comprehensive plan was we looked at consolidating the rail line that cut through downtown Denver to narrow it down to make it easier to connect. A couple of major improvements were new roadways, Little Raven Street, the street that edges the park, and then 20th Street and 15th Street were actually viaducts. So they were raised about 20 feet above street level going over the Platte River. We knocked those down, connected them at grade, so that way this entire system was all connected. But to give you an idea about how bad the Platte River was, when they knocked those viaducts down, they just knocked them into the river and then removed the construction rubble out of the river. In today's environment, you'd never be able to do that, but it just kind of shows you how bad and degraded the river system was. A second or third major infrastructure component was it was a series of bridges, one across the Interstate 25 to connect to the adjacent neighborhood. Low High is the area of the neighborhood, a bridge across the Platte River, and then a bridge across the consolidated main line. So you get, basically you're connecting downtown to the western half of Denver, all through a series of open space connections. And then really looking at how can we take a negative asset, i.e. the South Platte River, create 100-foot native buffer around it, but look at restoring its natural flows. Just downstream from here, we actually, in this park here, introduced a kayaking course, interestingly enough, as part of this bigger restoration system. But the other thing that we did here was we looked at the park and said, can the park actually become a relief valve during floods and high water? And so what you're seeing here is an area we call the seeps that during big rain events, it actually pulls water into the park, holds it, allows the first flush of water to get through the river system, and then drains the water back into the river. So it's really improving water opportunities downstream while creating an interesting, highly dynamic ecological area. And so you can see as it exists during high water, but then what it looks like as a nature area at the center of the park when it's dry. And so this area has become one of the most popular areas of the park because of all the cottonwood trees that have taken over. And it's kind of, you get nature right in the heart of your downtown, mitigating flooding issues while also creating usable public space. And so the open space system, as I said, creates the catalyst for some of the reinvestment that you're seeing. And what you see here is, this is what it looked like in 2000 when we began. So you can see literally, this is Union Station, our train station. There was nothing between it and the river. As the project was beginning to get underway, you can see some of the towers going in for the elevator systems, the first two buildings that got developed, continuing to develop and evolve. And then the reason I stopped at 2015, what we find fascinating about this development is it spurred reinvestment along the river's edge, but there was still this gap between downtown and the waterfront. And what's fascinating about that is most development patterns don't leave the edge of a city, go somewhere else and work their way back. Because of this open space system, it was the catalyst for this reinvestment around here. And now, since this time, this is all infilled with office and residential. And so we've connected back to the city more holistically. And in terms of metrics, I think the biggest thing on this I want to emphasize is that we took an area that was completely devoid of users and residents, have created 66 new 6,600 new residents, of which 20% of those were all attainable houses. So, or attainable either rental or for sale condo units. And we've been able to create this diverse mix of income levels on a waterfront, 20 new retail shops, about 250,000 square feet of office, 60 acres of new parks, and 3 miles of a restored South Platte River. So this really completely changed Denver in the time that I've lived here, and really gave us a whole new place and a whole new system to work within. And then the last project I wanted to talk a little bit about is a little bit unique. This is in downtown Springdale. This is where Daniel and I got to know each other. It's a building called the Jones Center, this is a former trucking facility that's been converted into basically a recreational and learning center full of nonprofits, intended for the low income, mostly Marshallese and Latinx community members that live in the region. Dedicated by Harvey and Bernice Jones, who founded the trucking company, became wealthy, sold the company, and converted this into kind of a community center. And so we got brought in the fall of 2020 to look at how can we take this ethos of health, well-being, and community give back and convert their 52-acre campus into something that takes their ethos out into the public realm, and really will create an east end to downtown Springdale, because downtown Springdale had completed a comprehensive plan. They always envisioned the Jones Center as the eastern anchor to it, but they didn't really have a vision for what the Jones Center could be. So we got involved to do that. And as a center, the center's real mission is to fuel community connections, cultivating spaces and experiences where everyone can learn, play, and thrive together. And really, our task on this was taking that idea, putting it out into the campus, and working with that diverse community to understand what does that mean. And so one of the most fascinating parts of this project was working with the Marshallese and Latinx communities during COVID. So we couldn't have traditional community meetings. So working with Daniel, we came up with a strategy of doing drive-through dinner events. We knew that those lower income communities were hit really hard by COVID, and we're also struggling financially because of job layoffs. So we ended up offering, if somebody came to an event, we would give them as many meals as they wanted if they promised to participate in an online survey. And to make it mean more to them, we had 3 different events. We partnered with 3 different local chefs. One was a Marshallese chef. One event had 3 young Latinx chefs that worked with a major regional beard-winning chef. And then the other was an African-American gentleman that had a barbecue facility. And so what we were doing there was trying to give back to the communities that we were trying to interact with, and give them as much as we were asking from them. And it was really quite fascinating. The number, I'd say during when Chef Judy Tadios, the Marshallese chef, participated, 80% of the people that came out and participated were Marshallese community members, because they wanted to support one of their own. They were seeing that we were trying to engage them in a different way. And it allowed us to really get them to interact in ways they typically wouldn't have. And so for this project, for the 6-month master planning visioning phase, we had over 150,000 touch points through social media, online, newsletters, these drive-through dinner events, and really drove up the participation. We had almost 2,000 people take part in our surveys, for online surveys. Those of you that have done those before know it's very difficult. We have one right now in San Diego we're doing that's been open for a month, and we've had 100 people participate. Even though that's a community of quite a few more thousand people, we can't get people to engage in the same way. So this allowed us to really understand what the community wanted and what they were looking for. And so we've created this vision for the JTL Green, the campus, of it being a place where the community can gather, where they can recreate and entertain, an oasis of natural Ozark landscapes, so really integrating native plants into it, and really creating an outdoor environment where they can learn, play, and create, building on the ethos of the Jones Center and connecting into downtown Springdale. So the core values of this project really are about natures and sustainability. We're taking over 50% of the campus and converting it back to native, non-irrigated plant materials that will be a learning center for the community, while also positively impacting their carbon imprint or footprint and the resources that they're using. And so a great example of that is this is an area just in front of the JTL shops. This is full of 27 nonprofit agencies that are doing really amazing work with the lower income communities in the region. They front on a big piece of lawn. We're looking at converting that into a working rain garden that'll capture all of the stormwater that falls on site, treat it, make this a lush educational environment. So as you arrive at the campus, you're really experiencing nature from point one and enter from your first entry point, and it becomes a part of the ethos of the campus. We're also looking at trying to figure out ways to create exploration, innovation, and creativity. And that's through play, that's through recreation, that's through art and integration of learning opportunities. So really, how can all of these spaces be multi-benefit and provide a variety of different experiences? This is the existing playground that exists on campus today. When it was put in about 20 years ago, it was quite revolutionary in that it was an ADA compliant playground. We're now looking at replacing that with a universally designed playground that not only works for people in wheelchairs, but also deals with mobility issues, with sensory issues, with autism and different spectrum of capabilities of interacting with community members by creating a variety of spaces on the play area that enable everybody to find a place that they can play, engage, and enjoy, even down to up to teenage girls is what we were discovering is a group that doesn't feel represented. So creating some hammock areas that are somewhat protected so they feel safe, but also a part of it when they don't really want to play on the playground. And then ultimately getting it back to the bigger goal of the Jones Center as a recreational facility, creating a place for action sports and fitness. And how can we bring that ethos of recreating and being healthy from inside out onto the campus? And they've got a really amazing bike course, but again, right now it's all turf. And looking at, can we restore that landscape and create an environment where you're biking and skating and doing action sports through native landscapes that are lower impact, better for the overall environment. And then ultimately, what most open spaces tend to do is create this opportunity for social gathering and entertainment and cultural gatherings. And what we've learned in working in a lot of these communities, especially with the Latinx and Marshallese and most non-North American originating community members, they use parks way better than we do. They like to go gather, hang out for the day, and spend time in it. So how could we create this campus as a place where you can come gather and hang out and take what currently is a major parking lot? This is where they used to park the trucks. That's why it's a big asphalt area in the heart of the campus, and convert this into the big community lawn where they can gather and recreate and come together as a community and realize those commonalities. And so ultimately, we're creating this really diverse set of offerings across this 52-acre campus that we think is going to create a unique open space experience at the east end of downtown that's really going to become an anchor for the entire region. And I think these are the types of opportunities that you can begin to explore as you think about your riverfront system. I know you've got flooding issues, you've got other concerns about native habitats, but there's not you can combine those and create really special places. Think about the food issue and giving people access to food. That park in Denver at Commons Park, one of the things we just recently added because of all of the dense residential communities around there without having yards, we've actually created a series of community gardens in that space so people can produce their own food and have their own garden environments. And so this is the vision of what we've created. We've taken lawn and parking and created a real green anchor to downtown Springdale. This will be funded, or the funding mechanism for this is unique. Northwest Arkansas has some major corporations that look to fund community related open space. So the Walton Family Foundation funded the actual design of this work. And then the Jones Center is going through a $40 million capital campaign and searching out grants for all of the naturalized systems that we're using to create these improvements, add art to the campus, and build a new Jones Center or JTL Green will be kind of an anchor in Northwest Arkansas moving forward. And so, to take this back to kind of what does this all mean for you all as a community in Austin? Why do you invest in parks? I mean, I think the biggest thing that we're seeing most places are investing in parks is because it helps attract and retain residents and businesses. because that's what's expected in the place you want to live. But there's also a lot of other non-quantifiable benefits that add joy, health, and public safety. It increases tourism. It will have an impact on real estate. And if you do it effectively, like we did in the Central Platte Valley, we can maintain attainable housing in those regions. If you do it and plan for it, it adds to your environment, benefits your environment. And as Dave was saying earlier, increases local spending because you're spending more time in your downtowns, buying from your retailers, buying from your brew pubs, and spending time on the waterfront and downtown Austin. And so how can your city do this? Again, as you're seeing in all these examples, there's no one real silver bullet. There's a lot of alternative ways you can raise capital for these. As you saw in Wayzata, a phased approach is something we've seen a lot. You have opportunities for some institutional connections. There is some private development and potentially donation, conservancy, public-private partnership facilities, as well as a regional approach and state and federal funding. I think anything that deals with rivers and naturalized systems that accommodate or protect against flooding, there's a lot of funds out there that can be realized to capitalize on what you need to do for Austin. And then ultimately, it's how do you leverage and what are the different funding mechanisms? And I won't go into the detail of this, but you can everything from just having the city fund it to private individuals and corporations fund it, and everything in between, where maybe some of the return on some of the real estate that improves its value because of the open space, you can create a TIF district where you can return that funding back into other city programs. So there's lots of different ways of doing this. You're just one of many communities that's struggling to figure this out as they move into a bigger visioning phase. But I think you're seeing it can be done. It just needs to be creative. So with that, I think I turn it over to Dave to finish up with a few specifics. Is that right?
Yeah, before we jump into that, because we have a little bit of time, this idea of connecting to a bigger picture, that it's not just a park, but that park is part of a much larger system. Scott and Dave, both of you guys have mentioned the importance of that, and that's very much appreciated. It isn't just about the project, it's about the bigger picture. But in that conversation, it very much starts with engagement, which then kind of talks about the why. So Dave, I know you guys have done an awful lot of work on the ground through this engagement process. Can you just kind of provide maybe some numbers as well? Because you were pleasantly surprised when we talked, and how awesome it was for the surveys and the survey responses, kind of just letting people know what you guys have done through this park engagement plan.
Yeah, so when our Parks and Master Plan process started, it was going to be simply that, and there was no mention, there was no concept of this whitewater project. And even then, our community, at first, I was concerned that we weren't getting the response that I thought that Austin would provide. And then, according to our consultant who's walking us through this process, they like, no, your community is exceeding what other communities are doing in terms of their response rates. And so I was blown away by that. I was very pleased that we were getting what I felt like was going to be then a little bit more accurate information from our community. And then recently we had an open house presentation where we kind of put together and presented what our public said was going to be the first step in this. And it was overwhelmingly well attended. And it wasn't just people who stopped in and put their word in, but they stayed and they talked and they engaged. It was an interesting story. We have a big Carini community, and they play a sport locally called cane ball, and they play in our parks and they get together, and there's no organization from our standpoint. It's not leagues. They just know to come there and play. And when we made a connection with some of their leaders and they found out they had an opportunity to come and speak to us about that, they showed up in droves. And they don't speak English well, so they were relying on a couple of younger members of their community to translate, and their translators stayed there through the duration of the event and helped their community express their wants and their needs. And many of them stayed in the middle of our open house when I presented this whitewater project, so it was a chance to introduce them into something completely different that they didn't know. They don't see our parks being used that way. They don't see Austin having those amenities, and now they do. So that's just an example of how starting this conversation and getting input from everyone kind of snowballs into, you get to find out things that you didn't really knew that you had an interest in.
So
and Dave, I'll just
David.
jump.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to jump in and say, I think, Dave, what you're seeing and we're seeing nationally, and what we try to do through this engagement process is kind of create this groundswell of excitement and engagement. And the fact that you have that in Austin is quite positive, because if you can keep building on that, you're going to have the community asking and demanding for investment into your public realm, where it keeps them there. It brings new visitors, new people moving to the city because you have those benefits, but you're already creating a groundswell, and it's keeping them engaged to keep the momentum going. Daniel can talk more about that, but that's a lot of what we're trying to do when we're creating these vision plans, is just build around consensus, but also build excitement, so that it's not us as designers or you as the city fighting for these amenities. It's the community saying, this is what we want, this is what we need. Let's spend our money wisely and use it for things that will benefit everybody.
Mm-hmm. And Scott, would you mind going back to that systems thing about the parks really quick, your slide? Because I do have a question right there. So Craig, thinking about it from a big picture, and Austin and all the work you're doing, what do you say about this slide? I mean, you are constantly thinking about systems and the various people that need to be at the table. Where do you see this conversation heading from the big picture, supporting what Dave and the community has been responding to?
Yeah, thanks, Daniel. I mean, having this as the final session of our speaker series is very fitting. As we talked about the comprehensive plan and moving that forward, mirrored with the downtown master plan, those things all play together. Our discussions just this week on having housing play a part in this, and how one feeds off the other, the natural environment with housing and those sorts of things. Each one is a critical component to the broader overall comprehensive plan. So we'll be kicking that off. Hopefully we'll work with the council and get approval for that as we end this year, and then move into next year to be able to complete that. Our mayor is fond of saying that the Park and Rec department is the toy box of the city. I think he's absolutely right. When we're talking about quality of life, this is a lot of the times where our quality of life is manifested. Projects like Dave shared, with the potential of the whitewater, or enhancing our trail network, building those systems around those investments that we've made, being very strategic about where we make those investments, and cognizant of how one helps assist another and translates into that success, but also sort of beginning with the end in mind, like what Scott said there is, this is really not only just an effort to improve our quality of life, but do it in a fiscally responsible manner, where one investment is really leveraging another. So I thought that was a really, really good point, and all this in an effort to make Austin an even stronger and better community, and what defines us as a unique community, as you say, as we travel about life's way and see other things in other communities. What does our community want to see as the unique features of Austin? We already have quite a few, but what are those things that we can move and enhance and move things forward in that real comprehensive way?
Right. So Dave, knowing that we're kind of coming up to the end, you had sort of a slide that you wanted to show, kind of make a pitch or a provocation to the world that's watching this. Do you want to push that up?
Yes.
Or okay.
Yes, I do. So I'd like to thank Scott for the information that he just provided, and it's a perfect example of working with an organization like CIVITAS and people like Scott, because what he showed us and what our public sees are not only things that are currently happening. Here's a picture of what it used to be. Here's a picture of what it is now and how it's moving forward. But then all the renderings and the ideas of what it could be. There's so many people that look at these spaces and their mind they can't wrap around how they could take this old, unused space and turn it into something that's more amazing than they would have ever believed. They didn't think their community could have that sort of thing. And that's, I guess, Scott, you're sort of in the business of delivering those dreams to people, and that's a pretty cool thing. And that's what we intend to do here as we're walking through our community and introducing them to some of these ideas, is that this really can happen here, and this really can have an impact that we think it can. And this isn't just the Whitewater project, right? This is a process. This is part of this bigger thing, the things that Craig mentioned, the things that Daniel's been talking about, and the things that Scott illustrated. Like, this is part of something way bigger. And I've been thinking the entire time that this potentially could be an unprecedented contribution to the community that's never been seen before. When you think about how this may play out over the next decade and what it's going to do for our downtown community, I don't know that anything has happened here to this scale with this possibility. And this absolutely can transform Austin, the mindset of people, the business we do, the quality of life we provide. I think this has the opportunity to be a piece of that bigger puzzle that just leaves us looking back at today and the future, wondering, wow, I can't believe, where we've come and what we have now. And this is going to be something that, people are going to remember what it was like before we had this. They're going to remember what it was like getting it. And then for decades to come, think about all the impact that it's had on families and people that continue to call Austin home over generations, how this is going to positively impact everything that they do and everything our community does. So my questions, I guess, to our community and maybe to communities in general are, are you willing to share your vision? Are you willing to step up and participate in some of these open meetings and these surveys and tell us what you think and what you like? We've already started doing some intentional consumer outreach where we've done, interviews with individual people, and we've already gotten ideas that seemed a little bit off the charts and out of left field, but we're like, hey, you know what? That's possible. This is a multi-phased process. This isn't a project, right? This is a process. And yeah, maybe we could put zip lines across the river and do this and do that. And maybe that's not the first thing we do, but anything's possible. And if you're willing to share your vision and you're willing to appreciate the vision of others, it can be a reality. And then asking people straightforward, are you willing to invest your time? It's going to take time for us to work through this. It's going to take our resources. It's going to involve emotions, some passions, and we all know, it's going to take money from somewhere. Fortunately, I think we're in the process of including our community in this, where we would have many people involved in not only the financing of this, but the design and the thought and the vision. And I just want to ask people if they're willing to participate in that process. And then finally, the big question is it worth it? Is seeing an outcome like this in our community worth it to you as an individual? And if the answer is yes, then we find ways to make that possible. If your answer is yes, it's worth it, then all right, let's glove up and strap on our boots and find a way to make this thing happen.
So to kind of end the session and think about this, I love the bullet point that this is both a process and a project, right? That's a very powerful statement because it takes time and energy to have that sort of curiosity as you walk into the community, but you actually need to have some tangibles out of it as well. But you can't get the tangibles without the process of planning and engagement. And then the other thing that both Dave, Craig, and Scott have mentioned is thinking big, thinking bigger than what you are right now, thinking bigger and talking about the next 20 years. It isn't just what's possible right now, but what's possible going forward, and kind of punching above your weight class, if you will, to a certain degree, particularly when you think of yourself as a town of 27,000. You're not held back by that identity. You're bigger than that identity. You're much more than that. And that's one thing that I think I've heard again and again from the folks in Austin is, how do we think bigger? How do we think more than just what we are beyond history? And that's been, I think, a great part of this process that we've been going through over the last several months, and the process you've been going over for the last several years. Lindsay, do you have anything to add from the Impact Austin side of things before we finish this session?
I just want to say thank you everyone for your time today. That was a really interesting presentation. I think as Craig said, a great way to kind of end our speaker series and roll it all together as we're thinking about next steps and how to continue to improve Austin. So thank you for your time today. And all these presentations will be housed on our website page. So we are working on launching that right now. Watch our Facebook page too, and we'll get you more information on all of that.
So Scott, Dave, Craig, thank you guys very much for the work that you're already doing in Austin, and Scott, the work you're doing all over the country. This is a great session, and appreciate everyone. Everyone have a great day and a better tomorrow. All right.
Thank you all.
Bye now.